Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inform New Hampshire. My name is Dean, and this is my co-host Richie to my right. We are very concerned with the state of affairs in our country, so about a year ago we started this program working to inform people about the news and information that you don't hear in the mainstream media. And we have just started last week a 1-hour show, which is live Tuesdays at 5 p.m. We also have a YouTube channel called Inform New Hampshire, so we hope you'll stop by there and hit the like button. And also we have a Facebook group called also Inform New Hampshire, and you're welcome to stop by there as well. So Richie and I, Richie was about a year before me, became a state coordinator for the National Liberty Alliance. When we look at some of the problems and the issues within our country, the National Liberty Alliance was a grassroots organization that had a great plan for sort of going after the problem. And I think, Richie, if you would, could you say a few things about National Liberty Alliance?
Yes. What impressed me with National Liberty Alliance is that they had a solution to America's problem, and it's right there embedded in the law. It's in the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution. It's also in the state constitution, but that's the court of record. And a court of record, people don't understand what it is. It operates strictly in the common law. It sometimes has a seal. The magistrate is separate from the tribunal. It has the power to fine or imprison for contempt, which is the only court that can do that, even though these fictitious courts do it today. But the National Liberty Alliance found this out through U.S. versus Williams and then started backtracking. And they discovered that in order for us to save this country, because a court of record, by the way, or the common law grand jury, they operate hand in hand. They root out corruption in government. And that's why we have such a corrupt government today, is they did away with the courts of record a long time ago. We didn't even know they existed. But that's what we're trying to reinstate, is the court of record, the common law jurisdiction, peacefully and lawfully. Obviously, that's the way to go anyway. Otherwise, it's total mayhem or chaos, whatever. So I would ask, and there are other things about the National Liberty Alliance. Right now, I personally believe that if things are going to happen, they're going to happen within the next, say, 3 months with National Liberty Alliance. You might want to go there and check them out. Sign up. It doesn't cost anything. Take the civics course. Phenomenal civics course for you and your children to learn, because they don't teach civics anymore. And that's why we're in the shape we're in. They've dumbed us down over the years. Like I say, it doesn't cost anything. Sign up, become a member, get involved, and help us make it happen. I will ask you to do that.
All right.
And if you want to talk about the assembly, Dean, that's...
Yeah, we'll probably maybe do that towards the end.
Okay.
We've got, every week we talk about Jerry Delemus, who is a fellow patriot here in New Hampshire. He's a former Marine. He's a husband. His wife is Susan Delemus, she's a prior state representative for New Hampshire. And we asked her to do an interview, and she's been gracious enough to do a phone-in interview, so we're going to call her in a minute and talk to her. But Jerry was kidnapped by the federal authorities. They made up some charges against him that were false. Some of the charges were for something that happened when he wasn't even out in the state of Arizona. But Jerry had gone out to the Bundy Ranch to support the process, keep the peace, and organize people so that there wouldn't be anything detrimental to the people happening there. And Jerry was in communication with the FBI about his plans to go out there. He communicated with them when he was out there, so he was above board the whole way. And yet a year later they came and they took him and they put him in jail. So we want to get some of that story from Susan, and we'll see if we can get her on the phone. Is there anything you want to say real quick about Jerry?
I do want to say he's been in jail for 15 months without a trial, or actually, I think they just started the trial process. But if you want to help Jerry and Sue out, please contribute to freejerrydelemus.com. Help with his legal aid. I mean, it's still a problem for him and Sue. And keep them both in your prayers. That's about the only thing we can ask, and hopefully you'll continue to do. So I thank you for that. Hopefully this will be Susan coming on the line now.
Hello.
Hi, Susan. This is Dean and Richie live on the show Inform New Hampshire. How are you?
Hi, Dean.
Hey, Susan. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Well, we were hoping that we could get some, every week, Susan, we're on our show and we talk about Jerry right at the beginning of our show because Richie and I had the chance to meet Jerry a few times prior to this incident. And although we didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with him, it was very evident that he was a great guy. He was very supportive of other people. And, we've always felt like it's tragic what's happened. And so every week we talk about it because we just don't want to give up. And I know that your situation is much more intense and a lot more dire to dealing with your husband being gone. And, of course, that we believe the charges are false and that Jerry is innocent of the charges. But that doesn't seem to matter in the legal system these days. It seems to be more about whatever the agenda is behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, I've already told our listeners at this... Yep. I've told our listeners at this point that just a little bit that Jerry was taken from his home, and that you are his wife and you are a former state rep here in New Hampshire, and that you're going through this massive ordeal of trying to, number one, keep in touch with Jerry, number two, try to get him home, number three, taking care of your own home and your own family. And my heart goes out to you, Susan. So if you would, how about just if you start out telling us what Jerry had done? Because I know that when he had gone out there, he simply was going out to keep the peace and to keep people organized so that nothing stupid happened. Is that...
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, he just like all the other people who spontaneously, not conspiratorially, but spontaneously responded to a video, actually, I think that was put out, made it to YouTube, that they were tasing people and throwing people to the ground and smashing people to the ground, women,
Right.
And so my husband actually found out about it on Drudge.
Okay.
And so he always checked the Drudge Report every morning.
Yep.
And so he asked me if I could find the telephone number for Mr. Bundy. And so, it's not that difficult to find telephone numbers in this day and age. So
Right.
I found his phone number and called it. And actually, I think his wife may have answered or he may have answered. And it was their home. And so I introduced myself and handed the phone over to Jerry. And he spoke with Mr. Bundy. And I heard Jerry say, well, what can I do to help you? Which is a typical thing for him to say. I hear him say that on a regular basis. What can I do to help you? And apparently the answer to that was, well, we need bodies. And that was what Mr. Bundy had said, is we need bodies out here. Mm-hmm. He didn't say anything more or less than that. Right. And so Jerry decided that it probably would be good because these people were having their rights violated, and he was afraid of what could possibly happen because we know that our government is not always sterling and doesn't always act in our best interests, and that people have been killed. It's the same old thing. Everyone always quotes Ruby Ridge, Waco, all of those situations.
Right.
And so he was concerned about an overzealous federal government responding or reacting
Right.
to what was going on. So he drove out there, and when he arrived, before he arrived, there was a standoff in Bunkerville, Nevada.
Right.
And there were a number of people, and it was in a wash, and I've seen pictures of it. I certainly wasn't there. And the funny thing was is that my husband wasn't there either. And so all of the charges that and I actually just reviewed the charges again today because he's going in for his hearing finally to change his plea back from guilty to innocent. He originally pled innocent,
Yep.
and the FBI was coercing and harassing our friends, and I actually knew that they had been harassing at least three families, and then I later found out at least 4, possibly even 5, and they were haunting these people and really threatening at least 2 families with the heads of households going out in front of the grand jury in Nevada and possible, we're not gonna indict you. Well, yeah, you can indict a ham sandwich. That's exactly what they did when they indicted everybody else. Because when you get indicted, there's nobody there to stand up against the people who are presenting evidence to a judge to get an indictment against you. You don't have a lawyer or anyone speaking for you. You only have the opposition or the prosecution coming in and saying, well, this person did that and this and that and this.
Well, that's
and
true.
And then the judge goes, oh, well, we better indict them.
Well, it's a lot worse than that,
know.
Susan. And you don't even have you don't have a grand jury in the traditional sense. You have a completely controlled grand jury that prosecutors control.
Absolutely. It's completely stacked.
We talk a lot about common law, and common law grand juries are made up of we the people, and these are not common law grand juries. They're controlled and manipulated by the system. But you were saying that Jerry went out there. Now, didn't he communicate with law enforcement or the FBI or someone, letting them know he was going out there?
That was when he went to Oregon.
Oh, okay.
When he went to Oregon and tried to help in that situation. And by the way, the FBI had no interest in Jerry helping at all. I honestly believe that Lavoy Finicum would not have died had they handled it differently and allowed Jerry to help.
Yeah.
To help with the situation, but they didn't. They had their plan already in place, so they didn't care to have anybody help them out of murdering somebody. I don't know.
Susan.
My personal opinion probably should stay personal.
Well,
Susan.
we have the.
But no, he didn't. There was no conversation with any law enforcement prior to going out to Bunkerville in 2014.
Susan.
We didn't think it was necessary. I mean, the FBI had not been in touch with us until after that had happened.
Okay.
On
Ask her
actually
what the
something
charges
different.
were. She can't hear me, I don't think.
Can you give us a sense of I know there was like about 9 charges, but can you tell us what some of the charges were?
Oh yeah. Let me see, because I think I got it here.
You don't have to hit them all, Susan, just briefly.
Well, I mean, one of them was threatening a federal agent with a firearm, and that's totally false. Jerry never even saw one. There was never. After the whole thing was done, then he was there. There weren't any agents in there unless they were undercover, and he didn't threaten anybody with any firearm ever while he was out there. As a matter of fact, he went and tried to speak with the sheriff. And he went to the sheriff's department and tried to speak to the acting sheriff at the time. And the sheriff would not speak with him or the people. It wasn't just him. There were a number of people who went and tried to talk to them.
Right.
But they. I'm trying to look for that page that I have that's got the charges on it. But at any rate, he tried to do nothing but keep the peace and keep cool heads and all of that. There were a couple of people there who had showed up, and you can't control who's going to show up. We had
Sure.
no idea what was going to happen
Right.
at all during the whole thing.
Right.
But I don't know if you remember, there was a couple that went into a coffee shop or something, and I think shot 2 police officers, or maybe 3, and killed them. And then there was a shootout, and I believe both of the woman and the man both were killed, or the man was killed and the woman went to jail, or something happened. But those people who were nuts and horrible and cop killers, we can call them, I guess,
Right.
were kicked off the property. Somebody brought to Jerry's attention that those people were in the camp and causing some ruckus, and so Jerry spoke with them and said, look, you guys have to go. You can't stay here.
Right.
And I think the guy was a felon or something, and he had a gun on him or something, and Jerry was like, you gotta leave. So he did. He left.
Susan.
And then after that, I think certainly after the standoff was when that happened, was when they murdered those police officers. But I mean, that's something. I mean, if Jerry had been in that place where those people were ready to shoot a police officer, he would have defended the police.
Yep.
Susan, can you explain what it was like when they came to get Jerry at your house?
Oh my God! Yeah, it was awful. It was really horrible. It's funny. I think it was a Monday. I can't even remember what day it was. It was March 3rd, and we had made some plans. Jerry had finished a job, and we were gonna, do something that day. And I don't know. It was a little before 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was getting my mom up out of bed because she's got Alzheimer's at like stage 5, so she's severely handicapped. Let's just say. So I was getting her up and dressed. And we had all the curtains drawn. We weren't looking outside. And then I was upstairs, and the doorbell rang. And I thought to myself, well, who's coming around here this time of day?
Right.
It's kind of early. And I remember thinking, geez, that's funny. And then I heard male voices downstairs, more than one. And I heard Jerry saying, "Oh, are you coming now?" And then I was like, oh, what is that? And I came out of Mom's bedroom and looked down the stairs, and there were, I don't know, like 2 guys that had come in, and they were standing on the landing, and they had AR-15s, and they were dressed like they were going to go into battle in Fallujah.
Right.
They had their helmets on and their tactical glasses and all their tactical gear and their gloves, and they had ammo strapped all over them, and they had, oh my God, I thought that the army had invaded. And then there were agents in the doorway, and I ran downstairs and grabbed my phone, and the main officer was like, Susan, you've got to come back up here. And I was like, I'll be damned if I'm not going to pick up my phone first. So I ran downstairs, grabbed my phone, then ran back up. And by that time, there were more men crowding into the house. And I looked out the front door. I kind of squeezed around as they were trying to move in, and there were like nine guys, all lined up, pressing against the wall of our garage. The entryway to the place has a little sidewalk, a 20-foot garage. And they were pressed up against the wall off the sidewalk with all of them, every one of them, tactical gear, AR-15s. They were ready. They were ready to kill us all if anybody twitched. I mean, my mother was upstairs and didn't know what was going on, and she was just moving around a little bit. And the guys on the landing were sort of getting fidgety and looked up, and one of them raised his gun, and I said, you better not be doing that. My mom is up there, and she doesn't need any of that. And they handcuffed him and put his shoes on for him, and they wouldn't let me get near him. And then,
Susan.
just before they took him out the door, I asked if I could kiss him, and then I ran up and I gave Jerry a really big kiss, and then that was the last time I kissed him was that morning, and then they took him away, and all of a sudden I was living in a new world, and we've managed.
Yeah.
We've managed. I'm sorry to get so emotional. I don't really talk about it much, so I'm not practiced at telling the story without it actually affecting me emotionally.
Well,
your family was ripped apart, Susan. So we understand. Were they state police, FBI, or did you know the difference?
FBI. They were FBI. They had FBI. Their FBI gear on. They had their little shirts and vests and stuff that say FBI. Yeah, they were all FBI. there were SUVs everywhere, and I just want your listeners to know that I found out this afternoon that anyone in support of anybody that's dealing with Bunkerville on Facebook, social media, any kind of social media, they have 1,000 FBI agents assigned alone to this, because they have bottomless pockets. They use our money.
Yeah.
They use our money for prosecution of this whole thing, and they're still trying to intimidate and scare people. And so they're listening now, I'm sure. But when they came here, they drove up the side of actually right onto the lawn, right parallel to our west side of our condo, and then there's a road out back that leads to a well house, and they were parked out there. And then there were like 5 other vehicles out front, and unbeknownst to us, they had stationed an agent at every single door in the backside of this condominium. There are 60 units in this condominium, and it's kind of spread out, and we're not on top of each other. We're just sort of, in 6 and 4 sets of 6 and 4 units.
Right.
And man, they had every door barred. They wouldn't let people out of their houses, and they were all armed, right to the teeth, with their helmets on. And they didn't have any. Their license plates weren't marked special. The vehicles were not marked anything special. You would never have known that any of those vehicles were being driven by FBI agents at all. I mean, They are very clandestine, and they are everywhere.
Well,
everywhere.
We're a police state.
There's silver
That's
trucks,
right.
white trucks, black trucks, SUVs, you name it. Mostly black or gray, silver.
Yeah.
And they piled Jerry into a van and slammed the door, and he was gone. And I was just, I was like, oh my God. Now,
Yeah.
they could have called us up and said, hey, Jerry, we've got a warrant for your arrest, and we want you to come in. And he would have come in, no problem. We may have taken, gotten a lawyer and maybe gotten a couple of things taken care of, and set up some stuff and made some plans so that I wasn't left completely bereft and shell-shocked. And here I am having to take care of my mother, and I have no job, and he's the moneymaker in the house. And I mean, I was shocked. But we're doing okay. We're doing okay now. We had a rally for Jerry just this last Saturday, I think it was, and
Yep.
and one of my friends, we'd had lunch the day before, and she said to me, just think of where you were a year ago. And I had to think back where I was at that time, and it was April, and Jerry was taken March 3rd. Boy, I'll tell you, it was, at that time, the month of April, I mean, for months and months, things were horrendous.
Yeah.
Really super, extra, amazingly scary. And and now I look at where we stand today, and things have been pretty phenomenal. And Jehovah has taken really good care of us and is with us every moment. And we're making it. Things are going, relatively okay, considering that my husband is still in a detention center in Pahrump, Nevada.
Now you have the opportunity to speak with him every once in a while. How often do you get to speak with him?
Oh, I speak with him. I speak with Jerry every day. We'll talk maybe 2 times a day, 3 times a day, and sometimes multiple phone calls. Like if he calls me in the morning and I'm running around and don't have a chance to sit down and really talk to him for a few minutes, he'll call me back. So I'll get 2 calls in the morning and then one in the afternoon or evening. And, yeah.
Susan, this is Richie.
Yes.
If you know, did you ever have a chance to look at the warrant that they showed you?
I never did get a chance to see the warrant. No, I have not seen the warrant. And I said, but he had one in his hand, because I said when they first came in, I said, you are not welcome in this house. you're not welcome in this house. And then Jerry's like, they've got a warrant, they've got a warrant. And then Phil actually did, he flashed the warrant. You know, I didn't read the warrant, I didn't look at the warrant, but I think Jerry probably did. And so they did have a warrant for his arrest.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if it isn't signed by a judge and supported by an affidavit, it's not even constitutional. It's against the law. Patriot Act
Right.
warrants that they use where, you know, you go see your grandmother and she signs it, that's no good. It violates the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, and it's null and void. But I know that's not an issue. I was just curious to hear what the hell the story was with that.
So Richie and I were at the rally. I guess it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago. But
Saturday, yeah, a week ago Saturday.
Susan, I want to share something with you because it just really struck me when it happened. But let's see. Somebody was on the stage talking about Jerry, and then you brought the phone up with Jerry on the phone. Do you remember that? And here's what.
Yeah, that was great.
Here's what really moved me emotionally was that when Jerry got on the phone and they put him on the speaker so that everybody at the rally could hear him, and he immediately started talking to everyone at the rally to support them and encourage them and to. It was just so interesting to me. It was phenomenal. It's not like he got on there and complained or tried to draw attention to himself. You know what I mean? And I remember, and this is going to sound a little odd, Susan, but I wanted to share this with you. But that night I was thinking about Jerry, and I thought, man, if God created two lines, and there were two lines of all the people, and there was the givers and the takers of the world, Jerry would have walked out of the giver line and gone over and started training the takers how to be givers, because that's the impression. He would not be.
That's about fits it. I hit it right on the head on the nail.
He wouldn't be content.
Accurate.
Yeah, he wouldn't be content to sit over there in the giver line. He'd go start training the takers how to give. It just was amazing.
Yeah.
The character of him is amazing, and that really spoke to it when he got on that phone. So I just wanted to mention that. So you have some.
Well, thank you for that.
You said that there's some better news these days. Tell us what's happening now, and what are the prospects looking like for Jerry?
Well, for Jerry, right now he's scheduled. I think I have there's a response to the request for his change to withdraw the guilty plea. And the prosecution is really coming back hard at him. But they not only did they coerce and intimidate him through family, which would be about right, holding people hostage, basically.
Right.
But his lawyer, we called him the lieutenant prosecutor, because really he was working for the prosecution, with the prosecution, and really encouraged Jerry to take the plea deal. He never intended for any of us to fight for Jerry to prove his innocence.
Isn't that amazing?
So at least the lawyer that he's got right now seems to be responsive and seems to care about, what Jerry's doing. So his at this right now, he is scheduled for his hearing to change his plea back to innocent on Friday. I don't know what time of day that will be. And, the way the system runs and the way things go in courts, I'll believe it when I see it. When it happens, then I'll say, okay, yes, it's happening. Because things can change. I mean, they've taken Clyde Bundy and his group. There are three tiers of defendants. And I don't know what will happen with Jerry. If Jerry changes his plea to innocent, and the judge allows that, which she may or may not allow that. She may just say, nope, you're guilty, and that's that, and you said you were, and that's that. And then he'll get sentenced, which is really horrendous. But the tiers of the guys, there were the least culpable to the most culpable. And the the most culpable is Tier 1, and that's Cliven Bundy, Ryan Bundy, Ammon Bundy, Pete Santilli, and Ryan Payne. And then the next in line for culpability in the prosecution's eyes is Dave Bundy, Mel Bundy, Joe O'Shaughnessy, Brian Cavalier, who actually had a nickname Buddha, and he could possibly still be an FBI informant. Jason Wood and Micah McGuire. And then the least culpable just went through a trial where the jury was hung. And that's Ricky Loveling, Todd Engel, Greg Burleson, and Greg Burleson also was an FBI agent, and that was exposed right in court that he was working for the FBI. Now, why they indicted him and why he went to trial and why he was the one who was found guilty of 8 of the 10 counts against him, I don't know, and I don't know what they're going to do with him. And then there's Eric Parker and Steve Stewart, and Todd Engel was found guilty of 2 counts out of the 10 counts against him, and everyone else, the jury was hung completely. They call it deadlock.
Mistrial.
And so the prosecution at that point has the prerogative of dropping the charges and just saying, we're done.
Right. Is that what they did?
I'm gonna just hang this up.
Okay.
Oh shoot, my phone. I've got so many phones that it's continuing to. We'll just live through this other phone ringing.
No worries.
So there, instead of dropping the charges, and the jury was hung like there would be 10 jurors for innocent and 2 jurors would say guilty.
Okay.
Or I think the least split was 7. I've got to shut this thing off. Unbelievable. What are these people doing? You can be quiet. Okay. So I think it was a 7-5 split,
right.
and 7 said innocent and 5 said guilty. So that was a pretty hefty split right there, and leaning toward innocent.
Right.
So now the government wants to take these gentlemen again, these innocent men,
Oh my God.
who were the least culpable in this entire case, and bring them back to court yet again, and run them through the court again. And we don't know if they're going to take Greg Burleson and redo him, or Todd and redo him, all 6 of these guys, or just 4 of them and then let the other. We don't know. But they've been pushed, their next trial's been pushed into the slot that Cliven Bundy's case was supposed to begin. And the prosecution is not going to want to split off. They're not going to have 2 courtrooms doing this. They're going to push Cliven Bundy's trial off for 3 months, and then the next guys will be pushed off another 3 months. And Lord knows what happens with Jerry. If he does go to trial, will they put him in with one of the groups? Will they try him after every other group has gone? I mean, he could possibly be in prison for another year, waiting to have a trial.
Yeah, it's awful. Now, the one thing I wanted to ask you, Susan, is because I had heard from someone, but I don't know if it's true, and I want you to verify. But Jerry had a reason for entering a guilty plea, and I think it was to protect other people because of the threats they were making.
Exactly.
Can you say anything about that? Or
they were threatening, friends of ours who were extremely dear to us, and are certainly would not be able to handle the situation as well because of illnesses and family situations. And it was they were threatened with extradition and possible indictment. And as soon as Jerry took his plea, as soon as he took the guilty plea, everything stopped. All the intimidation stopped. All the visits from the FBI stopped. Everybody stopped being harassed, and it all just went away.
Wow.
So Jerry was right in his suspicions or suppositions, I suppose.
But that's just
that
another.
That all ended.
Just another. It's another example of his. extraordinary character, because didn't he, by entering that guilty plea, he was going to take a plea bargain and put him and consequently live in jail for a number of years just to protect the people around him.
Oh, he was perjuring himself. That's absolutely right. He was perjuring himself and willing to fall on his sword. As a matter of fact, it's funny because I asked the lieutenant prosecutor to get me the transcripts of what happened the morning that he went in to change his plea. And prior to the there were two things that happened. They all went in, and Jerry asked a question of the court about perjury. And so the judge recessed and then said, "We'll come back at 10." So what the lieutenant prosecutor, a.k.a. the defense lawyer, sent me was the transcript of what happened after that at the 10 o'clock. But I didn't get the transcript of the 9 o'clock. So my friend and I were looking at the transcript that was sent to us, and we saw the name of the person that did the transcribing. So I called her up, and I said, "Hey, can you get me the transcript for, this date, time?" And she was like, "Yeah, just send me some money and I'll send it to you." So I sent her some money, and she sent me the transcript.
Awesome.
And he was fighting with the judge and asking her if he signed those papers knowing that what he was signing was not true. Wouldn't that be perjury, and isn't that illegal? And she said, "Well, no, not necessarily. It's not as simple as that." What?
Yeah, if it's in favor of the court, it's not as simple as that, right?
Exactly. If the court gets what they want, if you say that you're guilty and you're perjuring yourself, fine. As long as you say you're guilty, we don't care if you're perjuring yourself. It doesn't matter if you're perjuring yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how that went down.
Well, we spend a lot of time on our.
Jerry.
I was going to say, Susan,
the charges were insane. I mean,
Yeah.
And these are all the charges that were against Jerry were from the 12th, and he wasn't there on the 12th. But I'm looking right now, and I actually found the paper, and I'm looking interference with interstate commerce by extortion under 18 U.S.C. 1951. Use and carry a firearm in relation to a crime of violence under Title 18. Interstate travel in aid of extortion in violation of Title 18. There's no extortion. And not one. Even Greg Burleson, who was found guilty of 8 of the 10 counts, and Todd Engel, who was found guilty of 2 of the 10 counts, none of them were found guilty of conspiracy. Not one. They could not prove conspiracy, but they're going to try to get it back again. That's why they want to retry them. There was no extortion. Jerry never even saw any of these people. And I can't remember what the name of it, but there's a Transportation Act, and it means that if you're in a state like New Hampshire, where we have constitutional carry, but if you've got concealed permit carry and then open carry with a long gun, and you travel to a state with reciprocity, meaning that your intended destination is a state that allows the same things that the state you live in or reside in are,
right.
Then it's okay. And there's an act that protects you from traveling through states like New York that don't actually have that law. You have to have your firearms locked up. You have to have they have to be empty. The rounds ammo has to be in a separate place, and everything has to be locked, which all of that was. So there was no law broken there. Crime of violence, there was no crime of violence. There was no crime. There was no victim. There wasn't even violence on the day of the stand-up when Jerry wasn't even there.
Right.
Threatening a federal officer, he never even faced a federal officer. Never. Use and carry firearm in relation to crime of violence, interstate travel in aid of extortion and violence. Those are the counts. I mean, it's like Seriously?
Yeah, what you're describing is
No.
like a third world country, enemies of the people. The government,
Right,
just
exactly.
run away.
Well, I feel now, and after having been in government, I mean, it is gargantuan. I don't know if anybody has any idea, unless they're in government themselves, in the Senate or in the House, even the state of New Hampshire, which you think would be a rather simple thing. I mean, when we cut the budget, when I got in the first session that I was elected to, we cut the budget, the state budget, by 11% right across the board. Every single program, every one of them, and you should have heard the howling and the screaming, and the people are going to die in the streets, you know. And I mean, nobody died in the streets. Everything worked out fine, and New Hampshire is in much better shape thanks to that budget. And not only that, but Haskell had to take the budget that the Republicans put up when she was in for her term, too. So, I mean, that's because we fight to be conservative. But the size of federal government, oh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to imagine what that's like if New Hampshire is as large as it is, and we're, you know, supposedly a small state.
Well, Richie has pointed out on our show.
And the feds have, you know, you don't have bail. Everyone's saying, oh, well, you don't have bail. You didn't get bail. If you're charged or indicted with a felony, if it's federal, you don't get bail. They don't offer bail. There is no bail. There's bail in state and there's bail in county, but there's not bail in fed. You're either released to work on your case and then you show up for trial, or you're detained and you're held until your trial. And so that where Jerry is right now in Nevada Southern Detention Center, that facility is a private facility, and it is a detention center. It is not really a prison, so to speak. It's populated by detainees, people who haven't been found guilty, or if they have, they're shortly going off to be sentenced. They're coming through quickly. But that facility wasn't designed. It's supposed to only house people for 3 months, I think, three or six. I think it's 3 months. Of course, you know, some of those people have been in there, like Jerry, over a year. So all of those people, as far as I'm concerned, if they haven't gone to trial and they haven't been convicted, they're innocent until proven guilty, right?
Yeah, well,
everyone can laugh now. You can all laugh now.
Yeah, really.
Because, you know, it's not really that way, and people need to wake up and smell the coffee. You are not innocent until proven guilty. You are guilty, and they're going to prove you guilty, and they will do anything they can to make sure that you are proven guilty, and then they will put you in jail and throw away the key, and you can rot, and that's how they feel. I've never been more upset about how people, you know, the inhumanity of man. The people in that prison, the man who died in Jerry's arms was totally mistreated. The prosecution, the main prosecutor, Prosecutor Bogdan, and you can Google him, Bogdan, he was the prosecutor out there, and the lawyers for the guy who died had asked Bogdan if he could be moved to a medical facility where they could better handle his condition, which was congestive heart disease and something or other. He had some couple of things that were wrong with him. And so he was constantly being taken out, brought to a hospital or brought to the medical place, and then they were having to treat him, and it was bad, and they knew it. But what happened was the lawyers were afraid, because this person who died had actually taken a plea deal, like Jerry had taken a plea deal, and so they were going to be moving him, and so they were afraid that the prosecutor was going to rescind the deal, the plea deal, and they were going to decide to go back at him hard and try and really put him away much longer. And so they stopped bugging Bogdan because he had basically said, stop bugging me. And so they did, and he didn't do anything about it, and Reggie died. Reggie Lowe died. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the prosecutor's fault. They could have done something about that man's condition. And the food that they feed these guys, it's 17 cents a plate. We figured it out. About 17 cents per dish. And Jerry says it looks like sloppy, wet, gray cat food, and usually over rice or noodles or something. He says they feed them a little tablespoon of powdered eggs. Maybe they get eggs in the morning. And they don't get to have any real sugar because the inmates know how to take sugar and make moonshine out of it, so they can't have real sugar, and they can't have syrup, and they can't have anything. And they put pats of butter on absolutely everything to bring the calorie count up so that they're up to code. So their plates are up to code as far as the calorie intake for the day goes. But the food is basically inedible. So there's biscuits and stuff. He put a breakfast patty in his mouth one day and tried to chew it, and he said that was the first and the last time he would ever put that thing in his mouth again. It was just absolutely nasty. So their food, if they like when he goes on Friday, they'll give him a bag lunch, and the bag lunches are always they pre-freeze bologna sandwiches, and there's nothing on them. It's just bologna in bread that's been frozen. So by the time it's in the sack lunch and you get that in your hands, it's soggy old bread with nasty, God knows what kind of bologna is in there. Or sometimes they have cut up hot dogs. I mean, it's just bad. This is what not only has my husband been subsisting on this stuff, but this is what other people who have probably, conditions, allergies, you name it, and they live on this
Susan,
stuff. I can't even imagine it.
So I just wanted to ask you something. Two things, actually. One thing, I'll make a statement. I used to be a correction officer in Massachusetts. This is Richie, by the way, not Dean.
Hi, Richie.
I used to be a correction officer. I worked for the state. And we fought privatization, and the reason we fought it is these private prisons, and by the way, the bureaucrats that work in our government leave the government with a pension, open up private prisons, and the first thing they do is they cut the pay of the people that work there by a third. They go from $25 an hour to $7 or $8 an hour, which is where they save the money.
God.
Well, here's the thing. It's a corporation, and corporate America is killing all of us because the government and corporations are in bed with one another, and they make lousy bedfellows, I'll tell you that. The other thing I wanted to mention to you, because it's really important, by the way, they cut down on medicine, food, and everything, and they make a profit on these jails, which people should be outraged about. They're human beings in there, and I don't care if they're guilty or innocent. They should be treated as innocent until proven guilty, and even if they're found guilty.
They're contracted 90. The private prisons who contract with the federal government, their contracts hold them. I think it's either 90 or 95% occupancy at all times. That's why the police are so happy that now they can go pick up all of the illegals, because they could throw them in the prisons and then they stay in the prison system and it keeps the beds full. And they don't care if they feed them or clothe them or anything. It's terrible.
No, it is. The other thing I wanted to ask you, though, separate from that, is this the same judge, the female judge, that said, you're not going to be using the Constitution in my court?
Yes. Judge Gloria Navarro. Judge Gloria Navarro. She is heinous. She was actually introduced to and suggested by Harry Reid. And actually, when she came up to be
the domestic
put
terrorist
in place as a federal judge, there were objections because she was underqualified to take that position, and there were some objections when that was brought up. And then, but she passed through, and then Mr. Obama was the one who appointed her, and of course they appointed her to Nevada because Harry Reid. Well, you've heard of Uranium One with the Clintons. So uranium one is part of this whole deal. All that land and all of that stuff. You know, when I was a little kid and we were in school, we saw maps that with the national, resources, our national resources. Some states have oil, some states have wheat, some states have gold, some states, you know, like Alaska is very rich and could probably supply us with all the oil we probably ever need.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have these resources, and so the resources are valuable to other countries. And so these huge monuments that Obama named just before he got out and other land grabs that he was doing is all part of this uranium one thing, and selling our assets and our resources off and to foreign countries like China and Russia and other countries. So Harry Reid and Rory Reid, Harry's son, actually, were in on this thing. I think they had traveled to China, and so they were supposed to be that land. And Harry Reid actually owns property that abuts the Bundy property.
Yeah, I heard that. Yep.
So they're interested in having that.
Susan, I got a rhetorical question.
It's a tangled web. It's hard to follow. I mean, it's so mind-boggling that you have a meltdown just trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. It's like three-dimensional chess.
Yep.
Well, I can tell you this about the Constitution. If they're not using the Constitution, the supreme law of the land, in a court, then why was Jerry arrested, and why is he being held, and who is holding him? If there is no law, what is this all about? I mean, I know the answer to that.
Their own law. They're not allowing. Listen to this. I mean, at least in New Hampshire, we have jury nullification, and that was fought for by the most of the guys in the Liberty Alliance or the Liberty Caucus in the House in Concord now. And I would have been part of that group if I were in this session. But we tried to make it so that juries it's allowed to inform juries that they have the right and the duty to nullify if they see that this is an unjust law or an unjust arrest. It's up to the jury to decide. It's not up to the judge, and it's not up to anybody else. It's the jury, and it's their duty, and it's their right. And in the Western states, that does not exist. And as a matter of fact, if you try to talk about jury nullification, or if you try to inform the jury of jury nullification and what it means, and the rights and duties, you can be put in jail for contempt of court. They, as a matter of fact, one of the guys that I spoke with on the phone, who's in prison with Jerry, I talked to him briefly about the jury nullification, and he said that the judge took the jurors and had them removed from the courtroom. He removed the jurors from the courtroom so they couldn't hear all the truth, just the parts of the truth, just the parts that the prosecution wanted them to hear. And he got them out of the courtroom, or she did, and then she and the prosecution specifically brought up the subject of jury nullification and said that is not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
they don't want the jurors to know. One of the things that we could do from here in New Hampshire for Jerry and all the others out there is they're doing a billboard campaign. We're trying to get money up to put up some billboards out there before the next trial that talk about jury nullification so that the general population can see the words jury nullification, know your rights, or something, and give them a website to go to find out what their rights really are, so that they can inform themselves and hopefully would be curious to know, well, geez, what is jury nullification? And then if they get called to be on a jury, they could say, hey, I heard about this jury nullification stuff. So, I'm just hoping that that we're able to get that going out there, and because they're not going to, the court system and the prosecution and the police are not going to be forthcoming to the people, to the public, that become the jurors,
Yeah.
they're not going to tell them the truth.
No, they're not.
They didn't tell them the truth. They took the jurors and put the jurors away out of the room every time the defense wanted to talk about something, or the defense wanted to put in some evidence, or the defense wanted to do, something to inform the jury about what the truth was from their side, and the judge would get rid of the jury, and then they'd talk about it, and she'd say, no, I'm not going to allow that. She didn't allow evidence. There were 30 witnesses that were set to speak for the defense. On the defense side, the prosecution said, oh, those people are they are lay people. They are not professional witnesses, and we are going to, we're going to prosecute them. So what the judge did was she said to all the jurors, we're going to assign each one of you, or not jurors, but the witnesses, we're going to assign each one of you guys a lawyer.
We can do for her.
And if you speak and you get up on the witness stand and you say you were a witness to this and you were there in the wash or you were there at that standoff and you're a witness to that, then we're gonna indict you as co-conspirators.
Right. So they ended up scaring them off.
So,
right, Susan. Hold on.
Yeah. So they got their lawyers and they sat down with the lawyers and the lawyers were like, well, yeah, if you testify to this, they could indict you. So you could go to jail too. So 30 turned into 3 people who testified, and 2 of them were actually defendants.
All right, Susan.
One person took the risk of getting up on the witness stand and witnessing for the defense.
Susan, we're about.
And not only that, but I found out that one of the jurors that was stricken, because when they pick the jury out, they have people will get people in, and then the defense and the prosecution gets a chance to sit and talk to the jurors, the potential jurors on the case.
Susan.
One of them was the husband of the judge.
Yep,
the husband of the judge.
Susan, hold on.
Was chosen by the defense, and he was willing to go on the stand for the defense. That should have made a conflict of interest right there.
Susan, we're gonna have to end it right here. We're about out of time. You've been extremely gracious.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you've been extremely gracious with us, and I really appreciate it. What can we do for you? Anything real quick, like in 10 seconds? Go to Jerry Delemus, free Jerry Delemus, right?
Yeah, free Jerry Delemus. You can send him letters. It's Gerald, Gerald, Delemus, Delemus, and his number, you've got to write his name and then a number right next to his name is 15263-049. That's 15263-049. Gerald Delemus and his number, and then the address is 2190 East Mesquite Avenue, Pahrump, Pahrump. And that's a funny name, isn't it? Pahrump.
Yep.
Pahrump, Nevada. And that's how you say Nevada. It's not Nevada. It's Nevada. And
all right.
The zip code is 89060. I have that emblazoned in my head.
Thank you, Susan, for being with us.
If anybody wants to, you guys can get them in touch with me. You've got my email.
Yep.
They can find me on Facebook and message me or whatever.
Okay, Susan, we've got to.
We were taking donations, but we're good. For right now, I think people are still helping us.
Yep.
So we're not in dire need. So things have been okay, and we're making it, and we're keeping our heads above water right now.
All right,
God,
Susan,
God bless you. Yeah, God bless you
Okay.
both, and thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon, Susan. Okay.
Thank you. God bless you too.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We don't even have time to debrief here, so...